Welcome everybody to the thermal cooking class about bread. And I have procrastinated a bit about bread and teaching like totally just a bread class. And the only really reason is because I didn't want to make the bread by hand. Am I lazy? I think I'm lazy. Anyway, so I sacrificed today and I still didn't make bread for everybody. I went to Winco and bought dough and it worked great. So there you go. I'm really excited to have this. I have a lot of questions about bread. I remember when I first started teaching thermal cooking classes, I would make bread, and when I opened it, people weren't really realizing what the thermal cooking can do. And I'd open it up and bring out the bread, and they were like in shock that you can make bread in a thermal cooker. So that's what we're going to do today. I made a whole new PowerPoint just for the bread. We're going to go over some basics because there's always people on here that are just brand new starting out. It's amazing how many people have not really heard of thermal cooking, or they're just new to thermal cooking and they're looking into it. And so I want to make sure I have the basics covered and then refer them to the other basics classes. This recording, I'm going to send out to everybody that registered, and then I'm going to take this recording and I'm going to put on YouTube for a couple of weeks, and then it's going to be archived. So the two that are on there right now from the last two classes, I'm going to archive those into my thermal cooking course. And so people that have the thermal cooking course will always have access to those. And then I'll put this one on there for a couple weeks or a month. I'm not exactly sure yet. And then I'm going to archive this also. So let's get going. All right, thermal cooking, making bread in the thermal cooker. Here's where you get your information. I'll have this again at the end. Most of the places you can find information like Pinterest, Facebook, YouTube, it's Let's Make Sense of Thermal Cooking. My website is thermalcooking.net, and my email is cindy@thermalcooking.net. All right, yeah, it's good to have the course. Anyway, let's talk about that right now. I think that's the next thing that I have here is let's talk a little bit about that course. So these are where you get information. YouTube has videos, and I'm going to continue to put YouTube videos on. So this is on my front page of my website at thermalcooking.net. And it's all three of the courses that I have for $50. And if you go into the actual online store, it's going to have, it's $69 there. So it's great to have. I mean, it's just so people come to my classes, and if they're paying attention on my website, they'll always be able to get, for now, the $50 for three. And that's the cookbook. And I have huge plans for the online cookbook. And I know, Lisa, I haven't answered your email yet, but I did read it. I just haven't had time to get back. And yes, I'm going to continue to add recipes and everything and link the videos that I make to the recipes in the online cookbook. And then the other one is the online course. And that's where I'm going to archive all these videos, and it's a step-by-step. And as I'm able to make different, more information or add information that I think will be pertinent, I'll add more courses into this course. Right now it's 12 courses, 12 lessons, and it's just a brain dump I had. And I just put everything I could think of about thermal cooking in there. And so as I expand and get more information, I will put some more information there. That's why I love the way that this particular platform is set up, because I can always update and I can always add extra information, and you guys will always have the access to it if you own the course. And then the third one is the pattern of the hope sack pattern. And so it's all three of those for $50, which I thought was a pretty good deal. I don't know. So the benefits of thermal cooking. Let's talk about them. Fuel savings. When I went to Mexico, and that's the first place I really did my nonprofit work and things, was in Mexico. And they really did see the fuel savings, because the gas prices, or the fuel that they use to cook with, is high. And so when they realized that they could boil their beans with only 10 minutes boiling time and then put it in a thermal cooker and save a couple hours worth of just simmering, they were super, super excited about it. So fuel savings is the first thing that I think of when I think of retained heat cooking. That's why my niche is sort of, it is prep in a lot of ways. I can see so many more uses for it, but a lot of people think it's just for prep. And so I get it all the time. My thermal cookers are still in the boxes. And that's great to have them, but it might be good to figure out how to use them, because if we don't use it, an emergency comes, we're not going to feel comfortable, and that's not the first thing. You won't utilize it like you could do if you knew how to use it. And there's so many ways to use it in our everyday lives right now. Health is another one. This is in Kenya, and this is a kitchen that I went into when I was in Creta, Kenya. And you can see I took a picture of the stove, and there's just a little window up on the wall there. That was the window in there, and it was a really, really super hot day. And so I went in, and I knew it was going to be so hot, and I knew it was going to be so smoky, right? And it was really smoky. My eyes were just burning, but I didn't realize that it was going to be dark. And that's how dark it is during the middle of the day. And but the smoke that comes, that they're breathing all the time. I remember when I was talking to my friend that has a humanitarian organization. She works in Haiti. She's from Haiti, and she took a bunch of Hope Sacks thermal cookers down to Haiti. And we'll talk about what Hope Sacks are in a few minutes for those that don't know. But that's what she said in her presentation. She goes, these are going to save lives because the women are working over a fire all the time. It affects their lungs. They're just over there all the time. So health is another important one. In Kenya, this is what the women tell me that they love the most. And the very first person that had the very first thermal cooker that we took over there, or the Hope Sack, she sent pictures back. And she was so excited because she put stuff on at night, and in the morning she had food, and it was saving her time. And it can save us time too. So that's the beauty of it. There's no reason why I can't. If it's saving them time, it can save us time. And when I use it effectively, it saves me time every time, because it's super simple. You think it's going to be a long time because you think of, okay, I'm going to put the food on, and then it's going to cook, right? Yeah, but you put it on in a few minutes and you totally forget about it until it's ready to eat. It's really, you have all that free time in the middle, and it's not in my head. It's not like I have a crock pot sitting there and I got to worry about it being plugged in my kitchen, or I can't take it with me, or if I am taking it with me, I'm trying not to spill it, right? Because the thermal cookers are more self-contained and they're portable. Okay, how to use a thermal cooker. Boil, insulate, and wait. That's it. You're going to bring your food to a boil. You have to bring something to a boil. And usually it's food, but I'm going to teach you how to do it today without using the food as the thermal mass. We're going to use water instead today, but for the most part, you bring your food to a boil, you insulate it, and then you put it in, and then you just wait. Okay. This is something to understand when it comes to thermal cooking. When mistakes in temperature, I can't see because I got something in my way. Let me see if I can move it. Mistakes in temperature tests, in measuring, in time, and in other conditions may result in failures, which must not be imputed to the cooker, but the cook. This is really scientific, really, what it does. So if something's not quite going right, just realize it's just a little bit of a tweak. And it really is something that's super simple to learn. And once you learn it and you figure it out, you're going to remember it. And it's just thermal cooking's simple. There's just some principles you have to understand to be successful. And once you understand those, you can make almost anything in it. But if there's a problem, realize it's just your knowledge isn't quite there where it needs to be successful at it. Okay. Unless you want to make cookies, and then you're not going to be successful. Don't even try. So why science teachers should not be given playground duty. With thermal cooking, it's all about cause and effect. What you do on one side is going to affect how it comes out on the other side. So if you understand the principles going in, and I'm just going to go through those, then you'll be successful on the other end as you understand how that all works. Okay. When I talk about maximum efficiency, and when I wrote my cookbook, the Let's Make Sense of Thermal Cooking cookbook, maximum efficiency was what I wanted to focus on, because it was a preparedness type cookbook. I mean, that's how I presented it, and I did it as far as how to utilize food storage, because a thermal cooker works so well with items that you would normally have in your food storage. And so they just fit so well together. That's how it made sense to write the book. So maximizing my efficiency is how I determined the amount of time things boiled and the amount of time things stayed in the thermal cooker. And these are the things I wanted to do. I wanted to have fuel savings, because in an emergency, you need fuel savings. Does that mean every single time that you use a thermal cooker, you need to worry about fuel savings? No, not at all. You can boil stuff for an hour. It doesn't really matter if you have the fuel, right? But in my presentation, as far as how I wrote the book and in my presentations, I'm thinking, let's see how we can save some fuel. And the other thing is, I want to make sure that it retains heat for 8 hours plus. When I first started teaching retain heat cooking, I saw an ad in the paper and it said, keep your food warm for 3 hours plus or something. And it was for a thermal cooker. And I'm like, yeah, that's not even, I don't want a thermal cooker that'll only keep my food hot for 3 or 4 hours. I want it to be 8 hours plus. And there's some reasons for that. I want to be that efficient. So that's how I look at these things. And that's how as I figured things out as I wrote the book, these are the 2 parameters that I had as I did all the things I did. All right, so we have some do's with thermal cooking. Something must come to a boil. All right, so there has to be something coming to boil in the pot. Okay, and the pot needs to be 75 to 80% full to be maximum efficient. So as you learn these principles, you can manipulate it and have less food in there, but it's not going to stay hot as long. But you can totally do that. But for now, we're going to talk about maximum efficiency. So you want your pot 75 to 80% full. The don'ts, don't put anything frozen in it. You want it room temperature when you start, so you don't have the problem with having that cold piece of chicken or something in the middle that's going to drop the temperature of your whole pot if you take it off the stove. Okay, and no peeking. This one is, you'll get used to it where you don't feel like you need to ever peek, but it was hard at first. It's like, wonder if my food's not done. And so as you get used to it and just follow the times, and a lot of times my times are longer in the book than they actually need to be, just because, like, if I'm going to use a thermal cooker, I'm going to be having like 2 hours. I want to eat after 2 hours, 2 hours or past. If it's going to be under 2 hours, I'm probably going to figure another way to cook. That's just sort of the parameter I put in my head. Okay, principles of thermal cooking. We have thermal mass, the insulator, temperature, and timing. So thermal mass is the amount of, okay? So let's say that we have we have soup that we put in a thermal cooker, we put it on the stove, and the heat's going to go into the soup, right? We take it off the stove and the heat's going to go out of the soup. That's just how it works. With thermal cooking, what we do is we add insulation between heating it up and then we take it off and put it in an insulator. So what it does is it traps that heat and extends the amount of time your food will stay hot. And for a certain amount of time, it will continue cooking. So this is what it looks like. You've got your food your heat going into your soup or whatever it is. Then you put it into an insulator, and then as the heat comes out, it's going to come out more slowly because it's trapped in there and it's insulated. So that's really all that we're doing when we do retain heat cooking. When we insulate a pot, you can see I have two. Oh, okay. So I have 2 cookers here. One's big and one's little. The pot's on the outside. The thermal cookers in the middle are both the same size. So imagine bringing those pots to boil. And if they come to a boil, the small one will always boil sooner than the large one because there's less thermal mass or less water in there to bring up to temperature. So it will always boil first. It will always cool the soonest also. For the same reason, there's less thermal mass, and so there's less heat to go out. There's just less. Okay, so is it possible to have the small pot retain heat as long as the large pot? Obviously, I said how. So there is definitely, you can. I have 3 solutions to that. If you have a small pot and you want to retain heat longer, you want to increase the amount of your insulation. So this right here are 2 Saratoga Jack thermal cookers. One is a 7-liter, one is a 5.5. And these retain heat about the same because the smaller 5.5-liter thermal cooker has more insulation in it to compensate for less thermal mass. All right. While we're on the subject of this, because I'm not going to cover this later, Saratoga Jack is totally out of the 7 liters, totally out. You can message me if you think you'd like one. I'll put you on a waiting list just in case they happen to get them. If they decide to order them, we'll let you know when that, or if that ever happens. But the 5.5, I have like 2 cases left and then they're gone. So if anybody still wants a thermal cooker, like a stainless steel type, or you know somebody that might want one, now's the time, because Jack's totally out and I'm to the end. So anyway, I think I sold 9 in the past 3 days. So they're going to be gone. All right. The other thing you can do is increase the quality of your insulation. So there's different qualities of insulators. And this one, you have the basket with blankets. That's not going to be nearly as efficient as so many other ways of doing it. This stainless steel one is a Mr. D thermal cooker. They're out of England, and it's a vacuum seal. Vacuum seal is the most efficient way to retain heat, is using a vacuum or sense of air, right? There's no air in there. And it's the most efficient way to do it, but it still has its, it can't always, depending on the size of the pot, it's still going to affect the effectiveness of the cooker. So this particular one is a 3-liter pot, which is awesome for less people. Okay, because those 7-liter pots make a whole lot of food. So this little one, the 3-liter one, retains heat about the same as the bigger ones. And that's because it has a better insulator, but it also has a second thing, which is my third thing that you can do, and that is add extra thermal mass. So what Dave has done is he added this cast iron base on the pot itself, which retains more heat and adds more thermal mass. And those 2 combinations of a better insulator and better thermal mass, or more thermal mass, make that little cooker as effective as the bigger ones, and really opens up a world to people that have to cook for, 2 or 3 or 4 people, where the big ones, you're eating the same thing for much too long because you make a big pot of food. Okay. Temperature. At sea level, boiling point's 212 degrees. And so at my house, it's 205. Okay, so if my boiling point's 205 and the cooker loses 5 degrees, a lot of these cookers lose around 5 to 6 degrees an hour. After 8 hours at my house, my temperature's still 165 degrees. And why am I even talking about temperature? The reason I'm talking about temperature is because of food safety. We want to make sure that our food stays safe. I've never actually had my food be too cold when I open it, because I know the principles I'm looking at, and I've known when my food needs to be taken out. If it's 165, I still have 25 degrees that I can let it cool down 25 more degrees before I'm in danger of needing to put it in the fridge or heat it back up or get it eaten. So that's another 3 or 4 hours. Once it starts cooling down, it'll cool down a little faster. So you want to make sure and pay attention, but at the same time, I haven't had this be an issue, which has been awesome. All right, timing and boiling. So boiling and waiting. I'm going to talk about this in general right now, but I'm going to go into depth on this when we talk about bread. But right now, I would just want to talk about things that come to a boil. I'm not going to talk about container cooking right now, because we'll talk about that when we go over the bread piece. But as far as if you had a big pot of stew, or if you had something that's coming to a boil and the whole thing's boiling, like traditional thermal cooking, the timing in the boiling time, I determine based on obviously the food I'm putting in it, but a lot of times I do it on the meat. Okay. Let's say I'm doing a freeze-dried dehydrated meal and it doesn't have any meat in it at all. It's going to just need to come to a boil, and then I can put it into my thermal cooker. Okay. It needs to come to a nice rolling boil, and then just stick it in the thermal cooker. It's good to go. If I have a chunk of meat that's about 1 inch thick or so, then I would do at least a 4-minute boil. Is it going to hurt if I do it longer? No. But for preparedness and saving fuel, I need at least 4 minutes. And I let that boil, and then I can take it off and put it in the thermal cooker. If I go thicker, like 2 inches or 2.5 inches thick, like if I had a roast, and I cut it thicker like this, I just cut it thick instead of having it round. And I cut it like this. The reason I'm cutting it is so that I don't have to boil it so long. Okay, I'm trying to save fuel because remember, I'm all about fuel savings. So if I do that, it's at least a 10-minute boil, a 10 to 12-minute boil. 10 should do you just fine. And then I would take the whole thing off and put it in a thermal cooker in the insulator part. If I had a roast that's like round, like this, okay, it's about a 25-minute boil. And that just gives you an idea of how long to let them boil. There's a few other items like beans, you want a 10-minute boil. I do my rice, a 3-minute boil, although it's not necessary. I've learned that from my Kenya trip. It just needs to make sure to come to a nice rolling boil. Anyway, that gives you an idea. How long do they wait? Most things, I leave them, like I mentioned before, I leave them for 2 hours or longer. It's all about my convenience. When do I want to open them up and eat it? That's really what I do. That's how I think about it. That's how I do it. There's a few things that need to stay in there longer. Dry beans need to stay in there a good 6 hours. A pot roast, I like to keep it in there at least that long also. But most things are 1.5 hours, 2 hours, you should be good to go. Obviously, a freeze-dried dehydrated meal, you're 45 minutes or whatever. You're just letting that set up. It's going to be almost ready. Some of the things you're going to do, you're just using it as a warmer just because of the nature of it's already cooked, really. You're just marrying those flavors together. Once it hits a certain temperature, it becomes a warmer anyway. That's why you're able to leave it in there for as long as you want. Yogurt doesn't come to a full boil, and my book talks about yogurt. It also, I leave that in at least 11 hours because I've taken out earlier and it's too thin, but the more I leave it in there, the longer it gets nice and thick. So I like to leave that in about 11 hours. And yogurt, thermal cooker is awesome for yogurt. Anyway, so there's the boiling. I already talked about that. There's leaving it in there. I already talked about that. And so let's talk about how to make bread in a thermal cooker. All right, I'm just going to go over a few slides and then I'm going to demonstrate quite a bit today. Okay. All right. Okay, breads. We have all types of breads out there, and I'm going to talk about breads and cakes mostly. That's what I'm going to talk about today because they're sort of along the same lines. So I want to talk about both of them. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to bring it to a boil, but we're not going to boil. Obviously, it's a container with water around the outside, okay? Because thermal cooking requires water. So we're going to do that for sure. So we're going to bring it to a boil. We're going to extend the boiling time because the heat has to get in there. And then we're going to insulate it, and then we're going to wait. Okay. So the benefits to making bread in a thermal cooker. And I want you guys to be thinking of some yourself because I came up with some. So put it in the little comment section of what you think some of the benefits are. I thought of low resource settings, like when I go to Kenya or wherever, where there's less, you'd have less resources, power outages, emergencies, that sort of goes with power outages, but it doesn't really have to. Camping and boating, right? If you're going out and about, family get-togethers, whatever. It's not so much, these were sort of more than what I thought of as far as like, I don't know, I grab a loaf of bread if I'm going with my family, right? And then I'm going to take it with me. But any other ideas? But if I'm camping or boating, it might make sense to put it in a thermal cooker because I might already be up there and I might. Have you ever taken like Rhodes dough with you camping? I did to girls camp, right? And then I could use that as far as taking it camping. Anyway, so if you have any other ideas, add them in. I might add it to the list later. I might add it to my blog post. I'm going to write a blog post about this. If I ever have time, I've got half of blog posts written on container cooking from my last class last month, and it's only half done. We'll get there, right? We'll work on it. Hunting trip. Awesome. Yes, definitely. And Shirley, yeah, you love the course. It's always there when you need it, no doubt. Because I like how it's divided up too. So you can just go right to the area that you need to get the information. All right. All right, so let's do step by step. And I'm going to do it after I go over this real quick. I'm going to go over this and we're going to, yeah, no sun available to use a sun oven. Exactly. That's a good one. Because a sun oven is a great option for doing bread in there. But if you don't have sun, thermal cooking is the backup. Sun's the free source. A solar oven, if you own it, is a free way, right, to do it. Thermal cooking is sort of the next because you have to have some fuel to do it, but it doesn't take a lot of fuel. So you're right. If you're in an emergency situation or you just like to go out and you want to make some bread with your solar oven or whatever, but in an emergency situation, I'd always go to the solar oven first and the thermal cooking second. Obviously, if you can't go outside because maybe the weather's bad or whatever, then the thermal cooking is going to be the thing. All right. Keep adding those as you think of them, and let's talk about bread. So you have your dough, and like I confessed, I went to Winco and bought my dough today. Did you know they sell dough by the pound? I found that out a month ago or so, and I'm like, that's how to make my dough. That's how to make it instead of making this big, huge seven loaf batch. So I don't usually weigh it, but you can. If you have a small container, like a 1 pound loaf type, then you might want to. This right here is a 1 pound loaf. And so I might, just to make sure I don't put too much in it, but I can eye it. So I don't usually weigh it, but you can definitely weigh it. I was trying to figure out how much dough would go into each of my pots. I think that's why I have that on the scale. And then I'm going to go over when I turn this on to my thing and really explain the thermal mass piece. But just know that you want to make sure there's enough volume of water in there, enough water to make sure that it's going to heat all the way through. And that's why a trivet can be an important thing to have. And so you want to think about that, because and I'll explain that in a second when I actually have the pot here in front of me. All right. And then I put the dough in. I do it about a third of the way up. That's how big I want my dough ball, is about a third the size of the pot. And then I have an elastic with tinfoil if my pot doesn't have its own lid. And then I put it down into my pot on top of my trivet if it needs a trivet. The reason I'm going to show you about the trivet, talk about the trivets a little bit later, because I have some pots that need them and some pots that don't. And so that it'll help you realize what to look for as I explain those as we go through step by step. I'm going to add water to it, and then I'm going to bring it to a boil. I realize this isn't the same picture, but it's the only one I had of cupcakes. And then I'm going to take it and put it into the insulator. If I'm using a hope sack, I like to put it into a oven bag to keep my hope sack clean. And then I put it down into the hope sack and I put the top on. If I have a stainless steel one, I just slide it right in the stainless steel. Timing as far as bread. I'm going to talk a little bit let's talk about that now. If I'm using bread, most bread I boil for 15 minutes. If I do like a sweet bread, I boil for at least 20 minutes and maybe 25. I think it'd go a little bit better on 25. I don't know if it's the butter or the sugar and all those things in it. I don't like it super doughy, or I don't like cinnamon rolls that are doughy. You know how some people like them and they're just barely cooked? I like my cinnamon roll cooked in the middle. So I tend to cook a little bit longer for that reason. Cakes, when I go into cakes, there's a huge difference between the type of cake you're going to make. And I actually have a separate slide on that and on the timing on cake. All right, so let's go ahead and demo the bread. What I'm going to do, and I'm going to make an herbed dill bread. It is St. Patrick's Day after all, and I have a party tonight. So I'm going to take the bread to my party and let me show you what's in it. It has the bread dough. It has dill weed, onion powder, garlic powder, basil, parsley, and green food coloring. So my bread's going to be green, and I'm actually going to add some Parmesan cheese to it too. I just decided to try that. So let's go ahead and stop the share. Okay, so you can see that this has risen quite a bit. And this is what I want it to be like if it's coming out of my machine. I can see the air bubbles are starting to come into there. And I did wash my hands before I started this while I was over there. Yeah, I can just feel the air right in there. And I'm just gonna add, I already got the seasonings in here. I'm smashing it because the basil was from my garden, so. I forgot to take this out. Okay. And I'm gonna add a little bit of that. Okay. I'm just gonna, sometimes I've actually done this before where I did it more like a cinnamon roll bread, right? Where I just rolled everything out and put it in and I rolled it up and then had all the herbs in it that way. But because I want it to sort of go green, I needed to have, do this, okay? And it is definitely going green. We're gonna have green herbed bread. And I added like quite a bit of parsley because parsley doesn't have a really strong flavor, but it's gonna add to the green of my bread. Like you'll be able to tell there's lots of herbs in it. Oh, one thing I can talk about while I'm doing this, I made another loaf. So I'm gonna show you the one I already made. So you're actually gonna see how I did it, and then you're gonna see that it got done. And what I did is I needed it, it was a little cold because I had just bought it, and I used my air fryer. Did you know there's a proofing setting on your air fryer? And so I literally proofed it in the air fryer. So it was in there a half hour and it came out and it was awesome. I'm totally gonna do that again. And that's what I can do if I need to make a big batch of dough. I can save it, cool it down, put it in the fridge, and then use it later and just proof it in my air fryer. So here's my little dough. You can see that it's gonna be green. In parts of it, it's gonna be darker and lighter in some places. If I would have made this myself, if I would have made this myself, I would have added the green to the dough, right? So the whole thing would be, but since I didn't, I think it's gonna be really cool once it's cooked, okay? All right, okay. I'm not gonna, because it's a yeast dough, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spray my pan. I'm gonna use this tall pan for this. I'm gonna spray it. And I could have a little bit more than a pound here. I could easily use 1.5 pounds, but I don't. I could, but I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna do this size. Because I wanna I'm gonna show you how to do just a regular loaf, and I have another one of these. So I'm not gonna worry about it raising at all, because what's gonna happen is while it's boiling on the stove, this is gonna raise, okay? So I just put it in there. I have this, I'm gonna go to the top. Okay, usually what I do is add an elastic band around here, which is what I did this morning, and this is what happened to my elastic band. It's old. So I'm not gonna use an elastic band. I'm gonna use a string, because I couldn't find another belt. Oh, I didn't take time to look for my bag of elastic bands. And this will work too. And it gives you another idea of what you can do. So that's why I wanted to do it. Okay, so I have that up at the top. It's on. This is gonna go in to my Sourdough Jack's 7-liter cooker. And the reason I like this is because it'll end up looking like a loaf of bread, except for it's round, okay? And this is the pan that I have that fits it. So if you have a Sourdough Jack 7-liter pot, this is an awesome pan to use for, a bread pan to use for this, because I don't need to use a trivet. It fits just perfectly in there. There's plenty of room around the outside, so there's plenty of water. So when I bring that to a boil, and I'm going to boil it for about 15 minutes, then it's got plenty to heat all the rest of the way through, and it's going to cook that bread. Okay, let me put the water in there. Another thing that's happening while the water's going in there, I wanted to share with you, is I let the water go in till it just starts to float. And so you can sort of tell what happens, and I'll show you in a sec, but I'm going to watch it, and then once it starts to float, I'll take it out. So this is the thing, you can see that that's floating. Can you see that? And it's about maybe 1/8 of an inch from the bottom as it floats. And that's gonna be okay. The water line is actually only here, okay? And that's gonna be fine because you have this much, all of that's water. There's not a whole lot more you can do about it because there's so much air inside of that, right? The dough's there in the air. So what it's gonna do is it's gonna just boil and it'll work. Another one, what I want to do is I just want to do a regular loaf of bread. Okay, I want to use this container. Okay, this is it's like a camping pot, but it has its own lid, which is awesome because now I don't have to worry about the sustainability of having tinfoil. Although I'm going to tell you something else in just a sec. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and stick it in here. Okay. And it's a little more dough than I actually would like. Let me take a little bit off. Butter knives don't work very well, but that's going to be more than the pot can handle. Remember, I wanted about 1/3 full. Okay, that's much better. So there's room for it to grow. All right. Everything's going to feel like dough because I didn't wash my hands this time. Okay. I'm going to spray that, put that in, put the lid on. My hands are too slippery. Okay, so that lid's there. Okay, this is not a submergible pot. Okay, it's not going to be submergible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a trivet because, and this is what I want to talk about, I'm going to put it in this pot right here. This is the Saratoga Jack 5.5 liter. And if I didn't use the trivet, remember it's going to float, right? So it's only going to let me put about this much water in because once it starts to float, I can't really do that. It'll go topsy-turvy and I'll end up with water inside of this. And so I use the trivet, which means I'm going to get water up to here approximately. Let's go see. So I'm going to put the trivet in and the pot in. Okay, and you can see it's going to just fit just fine in there. I'm going to go add water. I should have added that extra dough to the other loaf. I should have done this one first and then added the extra dough to that one. Okay, this one, as soon as you can see it's floating, right? And it's just barely started to float. The water level is actually right here. Okay, so there's quite a bit of water in there. So I'm going to put this on the other burner, wherever I put the lid. Oh, here it is. So we'll just listen for those to boil. The other one has been in the cooker about 1.5 hours. So, and I got distracted and I forgot to just do 15-minute boil. It was more like probably a 25-minute boil. The beauty of thermal cooking is nobody cares, right? It doesn't matter. So what I did is this is my Tiger cooker. This is a thermal cooker by Tiger, and I've never used it before. So what I thought I would do is I was experimenting with the actual pot that it comes with. Let's see. So it just opens up like this. Oops, this part opens. And then here's the pot. Beauty, huh? It's got a clear lid on it. And you can see my my pots in there, or my bread's in there. It's hot. Okay, obviously a trivet didn't fit in here, right? There's no trivet in there. But I did do something to add a little bit more thermal mass to it. I don't know that you can even see this in there. I added rings. See, canning rings. I put 4 of them in there. let's see what it looks like. Okay. Can I tell you, it smells really good. Look, it's a crustless loaf of green spotty bread. Is that cool? There we go. It smells so good. But you can see how it's light in color, right? And the herbs. Okay, sorry, I should have had this ready already, but I didn't. Perfect for St. Patrick's Day, I would say. Let's cut it. There. And it'll air out just a little bit as the water evaporates, but it's totally it's totally cooked and just a perfect piece of bread. I should see how it tastes. Tastes like bread with herbs in it. Okay, can everybody do that? I think everybody can do that. I use dry because that's what I had. I would totally use fresh parsley. They ask if I use fresh parsley or dry. That's dry parsley. Okay. But that's only because that's what I have. That's going to be really good. And what I like to do is let it stay out for a little bit. It can still be warm, but it is going to air out, you know, evaporate just a little bit. It's good. There's no problem with it. It's totally cooked. It's like the texture of, well, bread, but like, cause it's warm, it's the bread that's like, you smash when you're little, right? Do you want it all smashed like Wonder Bread? I guess it's a little denser than Wonder Bread, though. It's warm, so it's smashing like that. All right. So we got back to our, I think what I want to show you is our presentation, back to the presentation, because now I'm going to talk about containers. Are there any questions about what you just saw as far as the process of doing this? I hear boiling, so about between 5 and 10 after. I'll want to put that in the cooker. I'm going to put one of them in the Hope Sack and one of them in the 5.5 liter Saratoga Jack, or I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, that was in there an hour and a half. So it needs at least, like I said, everything I leave at least 2 hours. I wouldn't take bread out in less than an hour and a half. Oh, good. Thank you, Sheila. All right. So let's talk about containers that you want to use. You saw the ones that I used, but so we did that. That's what I had in there. Like I said, the one I made before did not have the cheese in it. I'll be curious to see what the cheese one tastes like. And we opened it already. Okay. Other breads and cakes. Let's talk a little bit about sourdough. Sourdough was a nightmare for me to figure out. I tried it over and over and over again. And what I kept ending up with is basically bricks. And what I did, because I tried to follow the same thing. Did you notice how I didn't worry about letting it rise? I let it rise inside there. And you can see that it rose beautifully inside of there, right? So what I did is I finally figured out, well, first of all, let me tell you what I did with the bricks. I cut them into little thin pieces and I toasted them in the oven on both sides. And they made delicious crackers. They were so good, really, really good. So the flavor was really good. But to do a sourdough or a natural yeast bread, you literally have to put it in the container. Whatever tin container you're going to use, you need to have it fully risen as far as you want it to rise before you put it into the pot with water, right? And bring it to a boil. It needs to be ready because it's not going to rise very much once it's in the cooker in that 15 minutes. It's just not. So once I did that and figured that piece out, it makes sourdough bread. It's super simple. It's very simple. You do it just like we did here, except for make sure it's raised. Of course, you need to know how to make sourdough bread because there's a whole process to that, right? I have a little bit on it in my book about how to make it and how to actually do all that step by step. But I don't just Google, natural yeast or sourdough if you don't know how to do it, but it really does you can do it in a thermal cooker. And if we were in a preparedness situation, and you didn't have access to quick rise yeast, this is what you'd use because you just keep growing it and making more and using part of it and then saving part of it for later. Okay. Sweetbreads and cakes. Okay. Sweetbreads and cakes can be made in, obviously I've used a container like this. You can see that there's a container like this. And then I also use mason jars. Mason jars are heaven sent and are almost my most favorite accessory in retained heat cooking. Okay. I use them all the time. This right here is my carrot cake. It was my great aunt's recipe and it's in my book. And then this is a chocolate zucchini bread or cake or something. I don't know. It's in there too. And so I used to make this all the time in the fall because in the summer when I had so many zucchini, and it's really good and it works great. It's basically the same thing. You're putting the dough in the container. You're going to cook. The boiling time is determined by the size of your container that you're putting the dough in or the batter in. And I'm going to go specifics in just a minute as far as timing on them. Okay. The difference in cakes. If you have a homemade cake, like carrot cake, or maybe this, especially a carrot cake, something that has extra, the zucchini cake, some of these ones that are more dense, right? That could be upwards of, this one on the one side could be upwards of a 40-minute boil, especially a carrot cake. I tried to get carrot cake to work, tried to get it to work. It never seemed to be done. And what I had to do is extend the boiling time. So if they're homemade with extra ingredients in them, don't feel bad if you feel like you need to boil them longer. Just go ahead and do it because that's the only way you're going to have success. On the other hand, on this other picture, that's a boxed cake. Okay. Boxed cake is a 20-minute boil and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a nice, moist cake. It doesn't taste like a boxed cake. It's actually really good and I'll even eat it. Well, I shouldn't say that. That sounded rude, boxed cakes, didn't it? But I don't eat a lot of cake. But when I make it in a thermal cooker, it's really good. And it's sort of a little bit dense. It tastes like a specialty cake. And it's any kind of box cake. Because if you think about it, the moisture that you have and you put it in the oven, it's evaporating out a lot of that moisture. But if you have it in here, the moisture isn't really going anywhere. So it's creating a super moist piece of cake. And I just follow the recipe exactly. And I use, if I'm making cupcakes, I think there's 6 of these this size and 5 of this size, use the whole entire box up, the mix up, and then I have 11 cupcakes with it. Okay. All right. Types of containers. Is that what I wanted to talk about? Yes. Types of containers to use for bread. I use stainless steel ones, like I showed you. I use glass ones, and I don't use oven bags. I just carried this over from my last slide presentation, so ignore that part. But I do use stainless steel and I use glass. So no lid containers. You saw the whole presentation just a minute ago on how to do a no lid container, so I can speed through this pretty quick. It's about the amount of, and we talked about the trivets already. So the reason we use a trivet is to increase the thermal mass so that there's enough heat to go in and heat all the way through that bread and cook it. It's the same principle as in container cooking. Here's the tall one. So I didn't need to add anything at the bottom, a trivet, because it doesn't need it. You add the water. I always add the water after I have everything ready. I never add the water before. It's just a habit that I have because it mostly stems from experiences with mason jars and breaking them. But it seems to be a good thing to do. So here's the examples. This one on the left I think it's your left, should be your left, is a cinnamon roll. So I have a little video on how I make that at the end. And here's the zucchini one again. And this is an herbed bread. It looks like what we made, but not green. The covered accessory pan. If you can find them, be on the hunt for any kind of container, for containers and bread and everything. Whatever you can find online is awesome. Or in the store or in the thrift store. I mean, there's lots of places to find them. There's some of these are available on my website. The accessory covered pan, you just saw how that one worked. One time though, I couldn't find my trivet, or I didn't have one. Maybe I sold my last one. And so I used like maybe a couple of these jars upside down in the bottom, but that thing tipped and turned the whole time and water got inside of it. And so when I pulled out the bread, it was crazy because the outside was all mushy, gushy, right? And the inside was totally cooked because it still heated all the way through, right? And the mush hadn't got to the center, but it was definitely you have to have a trivet for these. You don't want to mess with having too much water in it and not enough, because there's so much air in it at the beginning that it's gonna, anyway, you don't want it to get topsy-turvy on you and have water get inside. Mason jars, on the other hand, when we talk about those, so here's the picture of this. You've got a trivet. I've used this for the cake. Here's a couple different cake ones. Oriental stores sometimes have different containers, but just beware, they're not sealable. And I'm going to talk about a little bit the ones that are sealable. This snapware container is sealable, and so it's submergible. And so you should be able to make bread in that and have it stacked on top of each other and have it be submergible. Mason jars are totally submergible. So I would go ahead and stack those with bread dough in them. This one right here on the left, those are, I think I did bread in these little containers here, the pints. And then I just sliced it. I was at a show, and those are all, it's just bread. You can see how light in color it is because it's not crusting over. I have somebody coming. Hi, Leisha Lou. There's Leisha, she's home. She's smiling. You're already back. Nice. All right. The middle one is making cupcakes, just showing you how you can stack them. And the one on the right, if you're making like a broth-based soup, you could actually put your bread dough, like Rhodes dough or something, put one of those in there if it's nice and defrosted. And then you can actually cook it inside of your soup itself. And then you've got your bread with your soup when you're ready to eat. Okay, pudding cake. I actually really like this. I got this recipe in my book, and it's pudding cake. So you just make it, and then the cake part is on top at the end, and it makes that nice pudding. When you pour it out, that's what it looks like. So it's good. Oh, here's my video. You ready to see a video? Let's see if it'll work. All right.
Welcome to thermalcooking.net. Today, we're going to make chocolate chip cinnamon roll bread. We're going to start with whole grain kamut bread dough. Roll out the dough, spread softened butter on top of the dough, then sprinkle brown sugar, cinnamon, and chocolate chips. I used a combination of milk chocolate and dark chocolate chips. Roll the dough as if making cinnamon rolls. Once the dough is all the way rolled, then you're going to spin it like a pinwheel until it's in a ball. Spray your bread pan and put the dough ball inside. This particular container is going to need tinfoil and elastic to keep it secured. To maximize efficiency of the unit, I'm going to need a trivet in the bottom of the pot. Take it to the sink and fill with water. You want to put the water in it until the pan starts to flow. And take the pot to the stove. Bring the water surrounding the pan to a boil and let it boil to 20 to 25 minutes. Transfer the pot carefully to the outer unit, close the lid, and leave for at least 2 hours. When you're ready, open the cooker, carefully remove your pan of bread, turn it out onto a breadboard and let it cool. And then ice the chocolate chip cinnamon roll bread and enjoy.
You notice that that particular bread, it was straight full grain. That's why it didn't look quite so fluffy, right? I could have probably let it rise a little bit and it would have changed the texture of it. But it was a whole grain bread, which is going to have a different texture too. But you can totally do this with any kind of bread, white bread. But I've always made those. Those are actually taste really good when you, anyway, make them. So can you hear we're boiling back there? And we should be ready, especially for the first one, to be able to go into the pot. Who know what a hope sack is, you already know, but for those of you who don't, this is the thermal cooker that I designed for charity. And so this is what I take and we donate them. So in July, we're getting ready to send a bunch more over to Kenya. I'm hoping to send 50 this time. And so anyway, if you go onto Facebook, I got a fundraiser I just started on Facebook. How tight do you put the canning lids on the jars for cupcakes? I just do them normal, not too tight. I just do them normal. I want them tight enough to keep the water out. Yeah, I tried brownies. Brownies are rough. You can make it, you can cook with them, but they're gonna not be the texture that you're looking for with a brownie. Sort of like cookies, right? At least the way I like brownies, I like them like chewy on the outside and I love the crust. So the thing about the brownies are you can make them, but it's going to be more like a cake. It's not going to be the texture you're looking for with a brownie. How much can you do? About 1/3 the size of the container. So with a Pyrex, you'll want the dough ball about 1/3 the size. Fudge, let me know how it turns out. Sounds good, right? I don't know. I've never made it. So make it when it's on and tell me. That would be awesome. Okay. So what I'm going to do, so this has got a pillow on the top, a pillow on the bottom, and a tube in the middle. So I'm going to put the pot inside of this oven bag to keep my bag clean. And I mean, it's just like it looks like it did before. It's just been boiling the whole time, right? I could show you, but there's really nothing really to show you. There's just the pot in there with the water. I really like to open it too much anyway, because I want to retain the heat in there. Okay. I just sort of pull out a little bit as I go around and push down with the other hand. I go all the way around and then put the lid on. Okay. And that one's done. Okay, so that's done. How's easy as that? That's how, I don't know, it's just the way it is. What else was I going to share with you about anything? Oh, as you're looking for pots, just remember with, because you're going to find different pots, especially if you have a hope sack, right? So like this pot will obviously hold this in there and you won't need a trivet. It'll just be that. Sometimes if it's really fits, there's not a lot of room with water, I might extend the boiling time. So maybe 20 minutes and 15, just instead of 15, just play with it. Obviously, if I'm using mason jars and just putting them in here, I can use as many as will fit. And I would guess 3 of those is going to fit in here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, in this pot. And those obviously would go into a thermal cooker or a Saratoga, or not a Saratoga Jack. Those would go into like a hope sack, because if you have a stainless steel thermal cooker, they're going to have their own pots, the outside pots, and then you're just looking for the right inner pot to fit. Okay, let's see what else is on my thing. I was telling you about going back to Kenya well, not going back, but sending thermal cookers over in June. I need to fundraise for the batting and the pots, because they don't have pots. And then have to get a bunch of them done. Anyway, have any questions? I guess we're to questions. I know you've had a few of them on there. Did we cover everything? Is there anything that I've forgotten about bread? Because sometimes I just don't know if I've forgotten something. Here's the information again, as far as where to find the information, find me anywhere. You can sure email me if you have any questions or need anything. What are some of the questions that I'm going to continue? Thank you for giving me information as far as talking about what you want to learn about, because that's going to be in blog posts and videos and in classes as I go through here. My goal is to have one class. I go a 501c3, it's going through 100 humanitarians, and yes, we're a 105, we're a nonprofit through there. I call it the Hope Sack Project, but it's technically, I work with 100 humanitarians, and the stuff that's going on with 100 humanitarians right now, you should go to their website. It's pretty awesome. I mean, it's like, we have a garden tower project that USANA is working with us. And well, it's pretty amazing what's getting done. I don't know how many garden tower systems we're up to now, but maybe 1,500 or something. I don't know, in the past 2.5 years. I mentioned something about aluminum foil in the supply event, and you said you're going to get back to, okay. So if we don't have aluminum foil, right, what else can we do? Thank you. That's what I need to. So what you want to do is you want to get a couple packages of oven bags. So here's an oven bag. And if you got a new oven bag, I'll go off of this in just a second, show you. Let me show you this last slide. Okay, so as far as like to donate to the Hope Sack Project, which will directly go to getting Hope Sacks in Kenya through 100 humanitarians. Right now I have a Facebook fundraiser that I posted yesterday. And if you go to my Cindy McMullen Miller page, you will find it right there toward the top, because I just started it yesterday. And that would be great. I mean, that's just awesome, because we can't do it without people. We can't. The only way we can do what we do is with people. And we're just not going, I mean, we do things here too, but our main place to go for 100 humanitarians is Kenya. But the idea of 100 humanitarians is, it's not just about Kenya, honestly. The ultimate goal is about not humanitarian organizations and people helping people everywhere. All right. Oh, here's the special again from the front page. Anybody that wants the combo. I know a lot of you guys probably already have it, and I appreciate you guys coming and hanging out with me. Okay, so this is here's the oven bag. Obviously, if it's new, it's not wrinkly, but what I would do is just cut a circle, and then you've got 2. And then these are the toppers instead of the tin foil. And then you use these over and over and over again, because they're like iron. I mean, I use them over and over. And so I would grab a couple packages and put them in your food storage so that you have them for your bread. And then if something got lost, you always have more. And it doesn't seem I mean, in a way, it's just the same sort of sustainable as aluminum foil, except for you have to throw away your aluminum foil because it tears. But with these, they'll last a long, long time. And if you have a couple packages, I think that pretty well last indefinitely. Most likely you'll just lose some. And that's why I would have backups. All right. Okay. What else we got? An hour and 15 minutes. Wow. I'm doing better to sort of try and stay on time. Not that I have a time limit, but I know everybody has busy days, and I want to make this a little bit easier for people to go back and watch later, if that makes sense. instead of having this long thing drawn out, crazy long. So anyway, anything else we got going on? Next week, I have a class in Bluffdale, Utah. It's a beginning class. We'll cover a little bit about bread, but you just heard about that. It's mostly going to be just the beginning class that I did last month. Next month, I'm looking for an in-person class. I'm also thinking about going Washington way. I have a couple people up there, maybe later in the year, and do a trip. If there's people in that area that would want to have me come and do a class, we can hop around a little bit. I go anywhere, really. Okay. Let's see, instead of elastic, cut a loop out of knee-high nylons, tough and cheap. Awesome, Connie, that's a great suggestion. And next month, I don't know what my subject's gonna be. I haven't picked a date, but it'll probably be another Thursday. I think I'll switch up time a little bit. This time's super convenient for me because I'm able to get things done in the morning. If I'm running late, like today, I played too much this week, but I got it all done because I had this morning. But I would like to be able to make it so the people that are sleeping right now are able to watch it. So I'm going to do I'm going to rotate the times around. Okay. So I don't know there'll be 2 next time, but I think I will. I like to, so I'll probably do them quite a bit. Yeah, thanks so much for all your support. It makes it so it's fun to do and have you guys all come. So I don't hear you as much as when you're in person. I like in-person classes too. But I like being able to have this because there's people on here that I can't reach, right? Without having online. So it's awesome. Oh, you're so welcome, Sharon. Anytime. I'm glad you come and hang out with us. Anyway, any suggestions you ever have? Oh, that's what I was telling you is thanks for your suggestions when you sign up for the class, because that is really helpful to me to know which direction to go. And my plans are big. My time is short. So I just get what I can get done. This video will probably be out the first of next week. So you're welcome. You're welcome. All right. We'll see what we got. You guys have a wonderful week, okay? And we're going to have fun at our party tonight with green bread. Everybody's got to bring green food. So it'll be interesting to see what else is out there. All right. Okay. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everyone.